Hello, 6th grade, and welcome to Studio 37 Remote Learning. Mr. Shear here, getting us ready to start our very first lesson. This first unit, we're going to be looking at an American art movement known as the Harlem Renaissance. I'm going to be sharing with you some of my favorite artists from the Harlem Renaissance through a slideshow that I'm about to send over on my computer. I want you to then select one of those artists and write a paragraph about why they're your favorite Harlem Renaissance artist and what it is about their art that you like. Next week, you'll be making a piece of art inspired by that artist. So keep that in mind as you select your artist. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to my computer now. Thank you for your time and attention. So in this unit of study, we will be delving into the Harlem Renaissance. The Harlem Renaissance is a time in the 1920s in Harlem, New York, where African American culture thrived. It is the time that brought us musicians such as Duke Ellington, Louis Armstrong, and Cab Calloway. It brought us authors like Alan Locke, W.E.B. Du Bois, and Zora Neale Hurston. Brought us the poet Langston Hughes, among many others. And it brought us many, many, many talented visual artists. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Hello there, 6th grade. We're going to go ahead and talk about the Harlem Renaissance. The Harlem Renaissance was a time in the 1920s in Harlem, New York, where black culture in America absolutely thrived. It is the period that brought us musicians like Duke Ellington, Louis Armstrong, and Cab Calloway. It brought us authors like Alan Locke, W.E.B. Du Bois, and Zora Neale Hurston. It brought us phenomenal artists, and I'm going to take an opportunity and show you some of these artists. But first, let's talk about what happened to bring the Harlem Renaissance about. So there was this time known as the Great Migration. This was a time from 1916 and a second wave that started in 1940 to 1970 when 6 million African Americans fled the South in order to escape segregation and Jim Crow laws in pursuit of jobs and safety. Many of these individuals found work in factories to help supply soldiers during World War I. In New York, many would call Harlem home, making it the center for black culture in America. And here's a map. You see the first wave, where many people came right through here and went to Chicago. Actually, we'll talk about one of those guys today, in this presentation. And then the second wave continued north, and they also went west. So the first artist I want to look at is Aaron Douglas. These are two massive murals he made. And there was actually a series of 4 of these. The other 2, unfortunately, are lost. And you can see this is about the slave trade, as these people are in shackles, being carted away in slave ships to their new home here in America. And these circles that repeat, those signify sound, specifically music. Aaron Douglas knew that jazz music would be a major contribution of the African American on the world stage. You see those exact same circles repeat in this one. Again, symbol for sound. You see the lady here holding a book. That is a symbol for knowledge. See the profile face. Very much shout out to the Egyptian tradition. So you see the slaves in bondage rising up from that in pursuit of a city on the hill. So you see an architect, see a scientist, and you see a teacher. Another great big piece from Aaron Douglas. This one's called Slavery Through Reconstruction. Panel number 2. This was made a little bit later than the Harlem Renaissance. You see the cotton fields of the South, and then you see the jazz music, and then you see them again pursuing a brighter future, the city on the hill. I hope you remember these circles, just like in the last painting, are symbolic of music, specifically jazz music. You see the broken chains, the breaking free from bondage of the past, pursuing a better future. This is also a nod to African Americans' willingness to serve in both World War I and World War II, and the Civil War, and the Revolutionary War. Next artist I want to talk about, his name is Hale Woodruff. Hale Woodruff is from Cairo, Illinois. He, much like Aaron Douglas, was not only an artist, but an art teacher. Aaron Douglas started the art program at Frisk University, where Hale Woodruff would go on to teach both in Atlanta and at New York University. So this is a series of 3 murals he did. I included all 3 of them, kind of tell the story of the Amistad Slave Revolt. He did these for Talladega College, a historically black university in Alabama. So this one is the mutiny aboard the Amistad. So these are actual captive slaves overthrowing their captors, taking command of the ship in hopes of sailing back to Africa. Unfortunately, they don't make it to Africa. They land in America, where they are again arrested and held captive, and they have to fight a legal battle that goes all the way to the United States Supreme Court. And these captive slaves that were captured and kidnapped were represented by none other than our president. He would soon to be president, John Quincy Adams. Of course, the former slaves or almost slaves won their court case and won their freedom. And the last piece is called The Return to Africa. This painting is 6 foot by 10 foot. These are absolutely huge. This one, 6 foot by 20 foot. Just massive paintings. And Hale Woodruff, like I said, just like Aaron Douglas and just like me, is not only an artist but also an art teacher. Taught at Atlanta and then later at New York. The next artist we're going to look at is Louise Maylou Jones. You can very much tell her African influence in both the patterns and the bright colors and the repeating patterns. That's kind of redundant. And in the masks. She often includes masks or sculptures from Africa in her work. And she had a very long and very prolific career. She actually painted all the way up until the end, and she died in 1998. So she made tons and tons of artwork. Very interesting lady, worth checking out. You actually got to see her in the documentary that you watched. The next artist is Palmer Hayden. Piece on the left here is this piece is called The Janitor Who Paints. And this is actually, that's a true story. He did win a Harmon grant, which allowed him to travel overseas, where he studied in Europe, and then he came back and he focused most of his work depicting scenes of black life in America. So this, of course, is a baptism. Many of Palmer Hayden's work are very religious. Archibald Motley Jr. He was born in New Orleans, but when he was young, he traveled to Chicago and he worked as a laborer. He was able to attend the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, and he also went to France to study. When he came back, he had these bright, lively, bold paintings of urban life in America, full of music and laughter and fun and brightness. His paintings are always a celebration of life in the city. Very fun, very uplifting, very colorful. Selma Blake, artist and art teacher. She was a sculptor. She didn't really live in Harlem, but she was making art at that time. On the left, you see a bust that she made. And on the right, this piece right here is actually the inspiration and the portrait used on our dime. That is, of course, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And I did not learn until very recently that our dime was designed by an African-American woman, which I was very happy to hear that. The next artist we are looking at is Sergeant Claude Johnson. I very much admire Sergeant Claude Johnson's work. He was a sculptor and a printmaker, and he was very passionate about celebrating African American life. He did not want to go to Africa for inspiration. He did not want to go to Europe for inspiration, and he actually kind of shunned other artists for doing that. He said he wanted to capture the African American experience and the beauty that they have. So his inspiration starts in 1619 when slave ships landed on our shores. This is a relief sculpture he did, and I think this is a little bit later, but I think it's really clear that he started to also draw on the art of ancient Egypt. See the profile face in the frontal line? I remember our teacher singing a song about that one time. The next artist I want to talk about is Augusta Savage. I told you guys you had to pick out your favorite artist. She is mine. Not only was she an amazing sculptor, I mean, that's remarkable. That's a really casting she did. And this is made out of plaster. It's called Lift Every Voice. She made that for the 1939 World's Fair. It is 16 foot tall. But much like me, Augusta Savage honestly believed that every child needed an art teacher. So much so that she used her own money to start an art school in Harlem. And that as her money ran out, she was able to receive a grant from the Carnegie Foundation. And she actually had the largest art school that was free in New York City for kids. Tuition-free art school in New York City. That was her. And then listen to what she had to say and tell me if it doesn't sound like somebody you know. I have created nothing really beautiful, really lasting. But if I can inspire one of these youngsters to develop the talent I know they possess, then my monument will be their work. Just love that quote. And two of the artists that she taught were Jacob Lawrence and my favorite artist of all time, Romar Bearden. So thank you, Augusta Savage, for your belief in art education. Thank you for your dedication to the future, because without your hard work, I would have never learned how to make a collage. The last artist I want to look at is William H. Johnson. William Howard Johnson did paint during the Harlem Renaissance in New York. In fact, in 1930, he won the Harmon Grant, which many of these artists that we looked at did win. He went back home to South Carolina to celebrate, where he was arrested for working on a painting outside. The experience upset him so much, he did not go home for another 14 years. He did, however, travel widely all across the world looking for different inspirations. And two of these three pieces I've got to see in real life. They were both at the Portrait Gallery in Washington, D.C. So it was really neat to see his very much African-inspired art, but also it's a very modern and very contemporary for his time. It's very abstract and simplified and colorful and catchy. So I hope you enjoyed looking at these artists. Remember, I want you to select one to write a paragraph about, and next week you're going to make a piece of art inspired by them. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed learning about the Harlem Renaissance artists as much as I did. Your assignment for this week is to select one of them, do a little research, find out your favorite piece by them, and get me a paragraph about them and why their work speaks to you. For extra credit, you can make a Venn diagram comparing two of the Harlem Renaissance artists. And then next week we will work on creating a piece of art inspired by your selected artist. Thank you for your time and attention, and I hope to see you soon.